Greetings, family. Welcome to the African Esquire show on WCC TV. I'm your host, Tony Cherie, and this is this week's African news. So let's get started. So we're going to talk about the horrible tragedy that happened this past weekend in Buffalo, New York. I'm sure probably all of you, if not definitely most of you, have heard already. But there were 10 African people who were murdered in Buffalo, New York, killed by a white supremacist teenager who literally just decided that he wanted to kill some black people today. So he went to a supermarket in a black neighborhood. He knew that it was inside of a black neighborhood. He had specifically chosen that neighborhood, specifically chosen this grocery store, and went in and just started shooting anyone that he could before he basically had to surrender to police. Now, some things that they're saying, first of all, police are saying that he wasn't affiliated with any particular organization, but they're saying when it comes to acting on violence, experts say assailants operate off of shared ideas rather than shared affiliation. We'll talk about this in a little bit. So they're saying that a growing theory called stochastic terrorism suggests that sheer thoughts can be just as dangerous as an organized network. Experts point to the manifesto where the Buffalo killer praised other mass shooters as proof these ideas were planted in the wrong mind and they grew. Mass shooters all follow a similar path to this violence, said a national expert on mass shootings. Then they start to fantasize about violently exacting means against these sort of grievances. There's no evidence any local extremist groups encourage this act, but their response is being followed closely. This is very alarming for some of us, and some of us, this is not surprising. All of us obviously have to share our condolences to the family. I was just reading, one of the victims was just going to pick up a birthday cake for his 3-year-old child and got murdered. Could you imagine what that child has to live with for the rest of their life? So absolutely our condolences to the family members who are suffering because of this. And something that I think we have to take away is that they're going to put us in a difficult position as African people. You already see the politicians trying to use this to push their own agendas. Biden has just, I think, flew out, if not today, he flew out yesterday to the community. And of course, he's doing the same old talking points, saying that I'm going to fight for you. I'm going to try to get this gun legislation done. And also they're talking about online presence. They're talking about what he was doing online. Something notable that I listened to is they're saying that he used Discord. Discord is a decentralized platform that a lot of people use who don't want to be monitored whenever they're talking to other people. And so, for example, you might hear me on this platform say, I use Telegram because it's a decentralized platform. And I use that basically as a way that I can share my content. I don't have to worry about that account being basically censored or being shut down by Facebook or Instagram or other tech giants. Well, Discord is another such platform that people use, and this is the one that he used. And so this puts us in a difficult position because you already hear the politicians talking about gun control, talking about monitoring online speech. And here you have experts saying that assailants operate off of shared ideas rather than shared affiliation, meaning they're saying that you can monitor people's ideas and use that as the target rather than specifically focusing on white supremacist ideas. That's the thing that I think we have to understand. The government plays tricks with us when these type of tragedies happen, is that some of us are so gung-ho, and we want to prevent things like this from happening again, that we are willing to basically co-sign different laws and legislation that would group our own activists, group our own people who think and feel and share ideas online into the same category with a white supremacist. And if you've seen what happened with the DOJ recently, the new terrorism task force, they use language to describe a domestic terrorist that literally describes us. So you have language describing us and just right along with how you would describe a white supremacist. And they're doing the same thing right here. So the point I'm making is that these people who are offering quick solutions, these politicians who have the prescription to fix your remedies, don't think that these people are coming to our communities with an actual sincere agenda to correct what was done. They're coming to the communities to get leverage off of the situation. And ultimately, the goal of the United States government at this point is to increase the surveillance state, which is going to happen. It's just going to happen. I think we all know that by now. But they want to see it happen quickly. and as efficiently as possible. And they're going to use any type of tragedy or any type of means that they could to push that agenda. And so right now we see our people being used as a means to push more censorship and more control. On the gun control aspect, I think we all, I think not all of us, some of us, might be anti-gun. I would say that we should understand where we're living. We're living in the United States of America with 3Ks. And this country is full of people, particularly people who might be on the right, who are loaded with guns, particularly people who have white supremacist ideologies. So particularly people who hate our kind, who are loaded with different types of military artillery. And the question is, will those people willingly give up their guns? And no, of course not. I mean, if you don't watch what's happening specifically in different states, and that's the thing we have to understand, even if you live in a certain state that has tough gun laws, and of course, that doesn't necessarily mean that there's not going to be a black market for guns. We know there are a lot of states that have very tough gun laws. I think like Chicago, for example, has very tough gun laws, but obviously has a lot of violence, right, happening intercommunally. But we know that those states are not going to be able to control interstate traffic. You're not going to be able to control people going to Texas or Louisiana or Mississippi. And if you think Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi are going to have a change of heart when it comes to things like guns, or Florida or Alabama, if you think that's going to happen, it's not going to happen. I'll tell you that right now. And if you try to force it, you're going to basically be forcing the next civil war. So if we understand what America is, just like Malcolm X has told us, decades ago, he told us that violence is as American as cherry pie, that we won't believe in these fantasies that these people are actually going to be able to seize guns from these people. These people will go down basically, causing an entire war before they surrender their guns. So that leaves us in a position. What do we do as African people? Do we outgun them? Do we try to? Even though they have, I would emphasize they have had a long head start at collecting these weapons. Do we try to get more? Do we try to, obviously we should try to get more organized, but what do we do as African people? I think that's what we have to be asking. That's what we have to be real about. I've said many times on this platform, I don't believe there's ever going to be a day in this country where, if the country is the country, like if this is the United States, I don't believe there's ever going to be a day where African people can live in this country without a threat of violence from either a white supremacist or a white supremacist of any type. So whether it's a civilian or a cop, that's just not going to be the reality. Whether it's your teenager who goes outside and is being targeted just for being in the wrong place, wrong time, for how they're dressed, whatever, or whether it's just someone who goes to the grocery store, someone who just goes to church. So many different tragedies we suffered. We're always going to be in this position where there are people who are being fed ideologies that they have to get rid of us. And those people are heavily armed. And if we think that we're going to live in a day where this metropolis is going to happen, where we're not going to have to deal with that threat, I think we're not dealing with reality. So I take this as a warning shot. I think God gives us warning shots oftentimes as a people that things are getting worse. If you notice, violence in general right now is getting worse, as I think many people predicted that the looming shutdowns basically had a lot of people on their computers looking up things, thinking things, contemplating things, more opportunity to plan things. And now we're basically at a point where society has decided to open up. And while it's opened up, we're seeing more and more violence being acted out in the open, out in the public. So I would just once again, say, I don't believe this ever going to happen in America. If you ask me what my solution is, I've said this many times, and I know not everyone, as Marcus Garvey said, not everyone is going to go back to Africa, nor should everyone go back to Africa. We don't want every person who is African to go back to Africa, because some of us try to go back with a European mindset. But if you are someone who is of an African mindset, of a mindset that you want to go to somewhere where not only you can be free, but you can contribute to the ongoing liberation fight, because we know that Africa still is colonized and there's a liberation fight that needs to happen there for our people there, not just physically, but mentally and spiritually. So if you're someone that's committed to that, That's the solution I would offer you. That yes, you'll deal with problems wherever you go in this world. This world is a world that has so many different chaotic things happening inside of it. The difference to me, though, is that if we're talking about long-term thinking and thinking about not just me, but my children and my children's children and my children's children's children, I don't think there's going to be any time soon in America, particularly when we don't have the numbers to leverage that type of war in America, but we have the numbers to leverage that type of war or fight back inside of the continent of Africa or inside of other African dominated societies. Like, so for example, in the Caribbean or different Latino societies, we know that there's those numbers there. So that's what my solution would be, is that you start thinking about what you have to do to protect yourself, and not just yourself, but those who are coming after you. And, and if that is stay in America, then I think you have to accustom yourself to what self-defense really means, to what arming yourself really means, and to what living inside of an adverse territory and adverse society is going to mean long term. It's not going to be a one and done thing. It's not going to be I have a gun for today and I don't have one tomorrow. No, you're going to have to know that there's a looming threat that is against you, and you're going to have to prepare for it. And if you're not prepared for that, then unfortunately, we don't know what's going to happen next. And I think that should be the big takeaway. We don't know what's next. What's next, I don't know. But we know that there's a lot of people who are prepared for the next step. And unfortunately, they don't look like us. So let's go to the next story. On Monday, Mali announced that they had basically suffered a coup attempt. So Mali has blamed a Western nation for a failed coup attempt. Mali late on Monday announced that security forces had thwarted a counter-coup attempt that said it was supported by an unnamed Western government. These soldiers were supported by a Western state, said government spokesman Colonel Abdoulaye Mega on state television. He did not name the country in question. However, relations between, obviously, the former colonizer France have deteriorated significantly under Goïta's rule. The breakdown in relations prompted the French military to begin a withdrawal of forces that had spent 9 years fighting Islamic extremists. The government condemned with the utmost rigor this outrageous attack. The attack was meant to hinder or even annihilate the substantial efforts to secure our country, he said, in return to a constitutional order that guarantees peace and stability. MAGA said that security forces had put down the coup last Wednesday night. It's worth noting that earlier in the day, the government announced that Mali was dropping out of a 5-nation security force known as the G5, and last month said that it was permanently suspending French media outlets, Radio France International, France 24, two of the most listened to news stations or outlets in the country. This is something that I've told y'all, I think it was coming as far as a coup attempt happening inside of Mali, and I'm sure that there's more to come. We have to understand and study how the colonial forces operate, how they don't let things go. And unfortunately, they have intelligence inside of many countries that they're constantly studying and looking for the opportunity to infiltrate different governments that go adverse to their globalist agenda. Right now, Mali is one of those countries that's going against that agenda. Mali has not only told France and basically told them to leave Mali from their military presence and other types of presence, so as far as news outlets, but in addition, they are closely aligned with Russia. And we know Russia right now is kind of the scapegoat for all things wrong when it comes to international politics. So it's only a matter of time that something like this is going to happen. I expected it to happen, and I expect more things like this to happen. Obviously, we don't have a lot of details right now, so we don't know exactly what was the coup attempt. We don't know what country was implicated, but I think that we can guess it's probably a Western. Well, he said a Western country, so it's probably France, U.S. or the UK, the three Western countries that are known to have a huge military and counterintelligence presence inside of the African continent. So I guess I will have to wait and see as far as what exactly happened. But certainly, keep in mind that the battle is not over when you separate from your colonial oppressor. The battle is really just beginning, because literally from the moment that you say that we want independence, you are fighting for your freedom to be maintained. And that fight is a very difficult fight. Think about what Zimbabwe is going through. Think about what Cuba is going through, Venezuela. Think about what every single country that dared to say no to the West is going through. That's what Mali is going through right now. So they have not won yet. I have to emphasize that, because on many of our platforms, Pan-Africanist, or African-centered platforms, we're celebrating, and it's something to celebrate, certainly, that we finally have an African country and a number of other countries that are basically walking away from Western influence. But at the same time, understand that that's just the first step. They basically have entered into a whole new war zone. And this is one that is not perfected, unfortunately, because there's not that many countries that have taken those types of stances and have outlasted, the colonial oppressors' operations. So they're still under siege. They're still fighting a really real oppressor. So definitely continue to stand in solidarity. We'll continue to watch what happens inside of Mali. Libya has arrested hundreds of migrants in recent days. Libyan security forces in the country's western region have detained at least 300 migrants in the last week and 3,000 in the past 3 months. The arrests come as attempted sea crossings from Libya to Europe are expected to increase in the summer, and as the country faces growing political uncertainty. I'll say not just because of that, it's going to increase in the summer because of this economic mayhem that's happening right now. Not just like in one region, it's happening globally, but in the global south, it's being felt much more severely. And so the reasons why people try to escape poverty and try to escape bloodshed and try to escape, unstabilized societies, it's only going to worsen under these conditions. So we have to definitely keep our eyes on what's happening in Libya. A Colonel Ashraf Issa, commander of the Sermon Dictatorate Support Force, a local security body, said his forces had arrested 300 in the Dawn's raids targeting smuggling operations on May 10th in the towns of Sermon and Sabratha. He said that at least 3,000 have been arrested in the past 3 months as a part of a wider operation. Libya has in recent years emerged as a popular and extremely dangerous route towards Europe for those fleeing poverty and conflict in Africa and the Middle East. Something that is very concerning, obviously, is that they're saying that they're targeting smuggling operations, but we know that all the people, and most of the people, the vast majority of the people arrested, were not a part of those smuggling operations as far as trying to smuggle people. They were people who were trying to get to Europe. So a lot of these are people fleeing conflict. If you were in Ukraine, you might be called a refugee, but unfortunately, you don't get that same type of treatment whenever you're trying to flee from Africa to Europe. Now, they're basically just migrants, and they're basically being looped in with a smuggling operation. So this is serious. Libya, a very dangerous place to be, particularly if you are a Black African. It's a very dangerous place to be. And not just that trip across the Mediterranean, it's a very dangerous trip. I really, I wish people wouldn't try to take that trip. We've seen a lot of people drown in the Mediterranean on these really flagship type boats. Like it's not a good type of thing to do, particularly if you have a baby and children that you are taking across the Mediterranean. But I also know that it's easy to criticize certain things whenever you're not in desperate circumstances. And many of us who are based in the West don't understand what it's like whenever you're starving in your home country. So I would just say definitely keep your prayers and your thoughts, with our people who are going to face more economic insecurity across the world, but particularly inside of the most desperate places, and these places that are already trying to flee, that were trying to flee before COVID, before Ukraine. It's only going to get more intense, and that means that the abuses by the Libyan government that have been reported, and well recorded, the tortures, the rapes, the slavery. People who are trying to leave to escape, they're being enslaved, literally put into a slave trade, the modern slave trade. These are things that these people are facing. So we have to make sure we're being diligent in supporting and standing in solidarity with what's happening over there. Lastly, the United States has charged political rival and Haitian president's killing. Let's look and see. A former Haitian senator is facing charges in the United States related to last year's assassination of former Haitian President Jovenel Moïse, authorities said. Now, before I go further, I know some of you are saying, why is the United States the one that's charging people for the assassination of Haiti's president, or, president, so-called president? Why is it that they are the ones doing it? This is not their country. Haiti's not a republic of the United States, not a territory of the United States. Haiti, in theory, is an independent, sovereign country. In theory, obviously, we know that United States has been treating Haiti like it is their colony for a long time. And that's because basically the Haitian government is allowing it. So if the Haitian government, if you don't know, in the country is still being controlled by the United States, is still a proxy government. It has not changed since Jovenel Moïse's assassination, and if anything, it's become more perfected. So now, John Joe Joseph, he made his initial appearance Monday in Miami federal court, according to the court records. The Haitian citizen was extricated from Jamaica to the United States on Friday to face charges for conspiring to commit murder or kidnapping outside the United States and providing material support resulting in death, knowing or intending that such material support would be used to prepare to carry out the conspiracy to kill or kidnap. He faces a possible life sentence. According to a criminal complaint, Joseph and others, including 20 Colombian citizens and several dual Haitian American citizens, participated in a plot to kidnap or kill Haiti's president, who was ultimately slain at his home in Haiti on July 7th. According to a report from Haiti's national police that the Associated Press obtained last year, at least one person identified Joseph as one of the leaders accused of plotting Moïse's assassination. The source said Joseph paid cash for rental cars that the suspects used and met with them ahead of the killing. Joseph is one of more than 40 suspects arrested in the president's slaying, and a third one to be extradited to the United States to face charges as the proceedings in Haiti languish, with at least 2 judges stepping down from the case. That's very interesting, that how basically already we can see that these trials are being farce trials. They're not true intentions to get to the bottom of it. As far as what I make of these arrests, first of all, there's already been well-documented reporting that the United States government is the one who ordered the assassination of Jovenel Moïse. There's been well-supported recording that it was government officials in this government who were conspiring to get him out of power so that the current president sitting now could be put inside a place. Basically, Jovenel Moïse had lost public favorable. He wasn't favored by the public. He wasn't controlling the situation enough, and the United States stepped in and replaced him, as all these colonial puppets are easily replaced. So as far as the U.S. not only being the ones to control these court proceedings, but also being the one to pick and say, this is the person that's in charge, or who actually ordered the assassination, we should clearly see that this is an effort to basically cover up their own implications inside of this situation, to basically cover up their own actions and see that this is not a true trial. This is not a true understanding of the situation, to try to get to the justice of the situation. Truly, they're trying to cover up their own mishaps. And so I don't take this serious. I don't take the other people who were implicated seriously. And truly, I would be more interested in seeing whoever made the orders that Jovenel Moïse be assassinated. I'd be interested in seeing them answer for what they did, instead of seeing these people who are being scapegoated. But it's important to keep track of the situation, because it's been 1 year later, right? And already we see that it's kind of far from people's minds that, yes, even though Jovenel Moïse was a complete and utter disgrace to the Haitian people, that it was still another effort to basically interfere in a sovereign nation to such a degree that the United States decides that they're going to pick who the president and who the foreign ministers and who the prime ministers are inside of foreign countries. That's a travesty. That's a colonial regime. And we have to continually call that out and not forget that this happened in such recent times. That is all for this week. Thank you all for watching. I want to remind you all to please follow my Telegram channel. The link is right down below inside of a pinned comment. To remind you all, Telegram is a decentralized social media platform. I recommend that you all get off of these big major websites and stop sharing your ideas with them. We know censorship is only going to get worse. So as of right now, this is a temporary solution, but essentially Telegram is where I post my articles that I use, that I cite in this video. It's where I post articles that I write. It's where I post videos that I do, anything that I want to share. That's where I post it. So that's the central location that I use. You can click the link down below and you will get taken right over to Telegram for that access to that. In addition, I would ask you all to stay and see the advertisement coming up. And that advertisement is for Pan-African Unity or Perish, a call for the abolition of neocolonialism. To remind you all, we're having a convention. It's going to be AUMD, Africa Unity Movement for Decolonization, which is a number of African-led organizations all seeking the abolition of neocolonialism. And so we're going to spend time talking, dissecting, and listening to many people who are well respected inside of the community to tell us what we need to be doing inside of this vital time that we are in to decolonize Africa, decolonize ourselves, decolonize our minds, decolonize truly. That should be the big focus for all of our people globally. So the link to that is also down below in a pinned comment. With that, I will see you all in the next video.
I think what we are suffering from is ideological confusion. That is, that we're not clear, we're not thinking clearly, and that we need a context within which to answer the question, is something good or bad? We assume that we have the same goals, but we never say what they are. It's time for us to think and articulate and establish our goals as Black nationalists and Pan-Africanists. We need vision, we need clarity. Otherwise, we can't answer the question, is it good for African people? Nationalist goal is self-determination. In the spirit of Delaney, Garvey, Malcolm, Amos, it is Pan-African commitment, that is the unity of African people worldwide and one Africa on the continent as a basis for African strength. So we are about building a Pan-African world order based on the principles of Ma'at, not in imitation of a European order. Ma'at as justice and truth. We need a nation concept, as Dr. Clark told us. A Black economic program, a cultural program, an independent political organization, independent Black media, independent African-centered education financed by us and controlled by us. All of this presupposes, very importantly, an African Black identity.